Ancient humans had no phones, but they may have been better at communication than you are. Today, you can message anyone in seconds and still feel ignored. But back then, one sound, one footprint, one fire, or one hand signal could save a life. Communication was not entertainment, it was survival. Now imagine this. You are not in a city. You are not beside a road. You are somewhere deep in an ancient landscape. Long before streetlights, maps, emergency numbers, or little blue dots on a screen, your group is nearby. At least they were nearby a moment ago. Then the trees get thicker. The wind changes, the voices behind you disappear, and suddenly you realize something terrifying. You have no way to call anyone. No "where are you" text. No location sharing, no backup plan. Just your body, your memory, and whatever signs the world has left behind. For you, losing signal is annoying. For them, losing connection could mean death. So how did humans stay together? How did they warn each other? How did they tell someone where food, danger, or home was? The answer was not one tool. It was a whole survival system. And the first part was the human voice. A voice could travel farther than a hand. It could cut through darkness. It could pass through trees. A call from camp could tell someone, "Come back." A sharp cry could freeze a group in place. A laugh could say the danger had passed. A scream could turn every head at once. And before you even understand the words, you understand the emotion. You know the difference between a calm voice and a frightened one. You know when something is wrong. Long before humans had phones, voices were already carrying location, emotion, warning, and trust. But voice had limits. A voice can be swallowed by wind, a voice can scare prey, a voice can give away your position. So sometimes the best message was silence. Picture a small hunting group moving through tall grass. Everyone is watching the same animal. No one wants to make a sound. Then one person slowly raises a hand. Stop. Another points toward the left. Move that way. Someone crouches lower. Stay hidden. No speech, no explanation. But the message is clear. This is the kind of communication you still understand without being taught. When someone suddenly looks over your shoulder, you look too. When a crowd goes quiet, you feel it. When a person raises a finger to their lips, your voice drops. Your body understands the signal before your mind turns it into words. That is ancient software. And ancient humans used it constantly. A face could say, "I am afraid." A posture could say, "Do not come closer." A pointed finger could send a group in the right direction. For people living close to danger, body language was not decoration. It was information. But here is where it gets more interesting. Ancient humans did not only communicate with people who were present, they also communicated with people who were missing. Because when someone walked through a landscape, they left traces. A footprint in wet ground, a crushed patch of grass, a broken branch, a fresh scrape on stone, a fire pit that was still warm. To you, these may look like background details. To a skilled ancient person, they were messages. A footprint could say, "Someone passed here." The depth of it could say, "They were carrying weight." The direction could say, "They went toward the river." The freshness could say, "They are not far ahead." This means the ground itself became part of the conversation. Not because the ground was magical, but because humans were paying attention. Think about how strange that is from a modern point of view. Today, when you want to know where someone went, you check a map app. Ancient humans looked at mud, and sometimes the mud answered. A trail was not just a path. It was a record of movement. A cold camp was not just an empty place. It was a message from the past. People were here, they ate here, they left recently, they went that way. And if you could read that message, you had a chance to find them. But what if the distance was too great? What if the group was beyond the next hill? What if night was coming? Then humans needed signals that were bigger than bodies. Fire was one of them. In the modern world, fire is mostly a tool. A stove, a candle, a campfire on vacation. But in the ancient world, fire was also a signal. At night, a glow could show where people were. During the day, smoke could rise above trees. A fire could mean safety, or strangers, or danger. But either way, it meant one thing first. Someone is there. Imagine walking near sunset, cold, hungry, and unsure if you are moving in the right direction. Then you see a thin line of smoke in the distance. Your whole body changes. Because smoke means possibility. Maybe food, maybe warmth, maybe your people, maybe not. But it is a message big enough for the sky to carry. And humans learned to make their messages bigger when they had to. A repeated shout, a whistle, a rhythm struck on wood or stone, a visible fire, a mark left where others would notice. Not every group used the same method. There was no universal prehistoric code, but the need was universal. When speech could not reach, humans found something that could. Then came marks. And this is where communication starts to stretch across time. A voice disappears. A gesture vanishes. A footprint fades. But a mark can stay. A line on stone. A handprint on a cave wall. A pattern made with pigment. You cannot always know exactly what these ancient marks meant. And that matters. You should be careful not to pretend every symbol was a sentence. But the deeper point is still clear. At some point, humans were no longer only reacting to the world. They were placing meaning into it. A handprint on a wall may not tell you a full story, but it tells you this. Someone touched that place and wanted a human presence to remain. In a way that is not so different from today. You take photos. You write names. You post little pieces of yourself and hope someone notices. Ancient humans had no profiles, but they still left traces that said, "We were here." And maybe the most powerful communication of all was not sound, signal, or symbol. It was memory, because ancient groups were small enough that people actually knew each other, not as usernames, not as contacts, as bodies, as habits, as voices, as faces around the same fire. They knew who walked slowly, who laughed loudly, who was good at finding water, who got quiet before a storm, who remembered the old path, who had seen a dangerous place before. This is hard to understand today because you often need a notification before you notice someone. But in a small ancient group, silence itself could be noticed. If someone was missing, people knew. If someone looked afraid, people saw it. If someone moved differently, people understood something had changed. The group was the network, and every person was part of it. Then there were stories. This is where humans became truly dangerous in a survival sense, because a story lets one person's experience become everyone's knowledge. A child does not have to eat the poisonous plant if someone tells the story first. A young hunter does not have to step into the dangerous river if the old people remember what happened there. A group does not have to discover every path from zero, because someone carried the map in memory. Before writing, stories were storage. Before schools, stories were training. Before the internet, elders were search engines with scars. And those stories were not just entertainment around a fire. They were instructions disguised as memory. Where the animals go, which season changes the water, which valley is dangerous, which stranger can be trusted, which mistake must never happen again. This is how information survived. Not in a phone, in people, passed from mouth to ear, from elder to child. Again and again until the landscape itself became full of meaning. So when you ask, how did ancient humans communicate without phones? The better question is, how did you forget that communication was ever anything else? Because phones are amazing at speed. They make distance feel smaller. They let you reach someone across oceans. That is not small. That is almost unbelievable. But phones also trick you. They make you think communication is the same as sending a message. It is not. A sent message can still be misunderstood. A read receipt can still feel lonely. A full inbox can still belong to a person nobody really sees. Ancient humans had fewer ways to communicate, but they had to use more of themselves. Their eyes, their ears, their memory, their patience, their attention. They watched smoke, mud, faces, hands, and silence. They listened to tone. They remembered stories. They noticed absence. They lived in a world where missing a signal could cost something real. And maybe that is why this topic feels so strange. Because you have more communication tools than any humans before you. But people can still feel harder to reach. So maybe ancient humans were not better because they had better technology. They were better because they had no choice but to pay attention. Before phones, a message was not just something you typed, it was something you noticed. A voice in the dark, a hand in the air, a footprint near the river, smoke above the trees, a story told beside fire, and a group of people trying every day not to lose each other. That may have been the first real network. Not wires.
Not towers, not screens. People, watching for each other, listening for each other, remembering each other, and long before the first phone ever rang.